Imagine being a farmer whose entire livelihood depends on skyrocketing fertilizer prices. Then, hearing whispers of a plant that could create free fertilizer forever, only to watch it vanish from the fields and textbooks. If something so revolutionary existed, why did governments and powerful industries make it disappear? The answer could change how we feed the world, and what really happened has been hidden for decades. Before we expose this crisis today, make sure you subscribe, because the truth behind this lost solution is urgent. Fertilizer prices have turned into a global shockwave. In just 12 months, between 2021 and 2022, the cost of nitrogen fertilizer soared by 145%, sending the price of urea to an all-time high of $1,043 per ton. The fertilizer industry now moves more than $200 billion each year, touching nearly every farm on Earth. For growers, these numbers are not abstract. They are the difference between planting a field and leaving it bare. In the United States, corn producers saw their fertilizer bills double, hitting $300 to $400 an acre in 2022. Midwest farmers reported that up to 40% of their operating costs were swallowed by fertilizer alone. In Florida, pasture managers faced input costs rising by as much as 70%, forcing some to shrink their herds just to stay afloat. Smallholders in Africa and Asia felt the crisis even more sharply, with prices rising 200 to 300% and yields dropping by up to 20% as a result. Behind the headlines, the numbers tell a story of deepening crisis. The fertilizer market's volatility has left growers scrambling for alternatives, while the world's food supply hangs in the balance. The sheer scale of the crisis is measured not just in dollars, but in livelihoods and harvests lost. Every spike on a price chart ripples through rural economies, affecting what ends up on dinner tables everywhere. The question now is not just how high prices can go, but whether the current system can hold together at all. In the heart of Florida's cattle country, ranch manager Susan faced a choice no one wants. Her pasture costs had jumped by more than half in a single year. The numbers on her spreadsheets were not just red, they were flashing warnings. With fertilizer now eating up 70% more of her budget, she sold off 1/4 of her herd just to keep the rest fed. For Susan, every animal lost was a personal defeat, not just a business decision. She tried everything the extension agent suggested, rotating pastures, stretching hay, even mixing in lower quality feed. Nothing made up for the soaring price of nitrogen. She said it felt like the ground was shifting under her. Hundreds of miles away in Oklahoma, Tom ran a small family operation on land his grandfather cleared by hand. He watched his fertilizer bill double in just 2 seasons, threatening the future of the farm. Tom's solution was not high-tech. He started planting clover alongside his native grasses, relying on what he called nature's own fertilizer. The transition took patience. In the first year, the clover barely took hold. By the 3rd year, Tom saw his nitrogen expenses drop by nearly 80%. It saved the farm, he said, and he could keep his cows and sleep at night. These stories echo across rural America and far beyond. The numbers are staggering, but the reality is personal. For every spreadsheet showing a spike in costs, there is a family making hard choices, shrinking herds, cutting corners, or leaving fields empty. Behind each statistic is a face, a voice, and a story of survival. And as more farmers look for answers, the search for a real solution grows louder. A single line of faded ink dated October 3rd, 1948, sits tucked inside the ledger of an Iowa farm family. The handwriting is small, careful, pressed into yellowed paper with a fountain pen. It reads, "Clovers in North Field, soil richer, corn taller, no fertilizer bought." Next to it is a column of numbers: acreage, rainfall, bushel yield. The note stands out among lists of seed orders and tractor repairs. A quiet observation in a book built for business. The ledger itself is cataloged in the Iowa State University Special Collections under the reference code AG1948CLVNF. According to the archivist's log, the entry matches the style and ink used across the rest of the book, consistent with farm records from the late 1940s. The farmer's name penciled on the inside cover matches local land deeds from the era. There is no sign of embellishment, just a factual record set down in the middle of harvest season, with no hint it would ever matter to anyone but the family who kept it. This artifact does not claim a breakthrough. It does not shout about a miracle weed or a secret formula. Instead, it quietly documents a year when fertilizer bills stopped appearing on the expense page. The clover's effect is measured only by the absence of a purchase, the increase in yield, and the simple satisfaction of a crop grown without outside help. The ledger offers no technical explanation, only a pattern noticed, a result recorded, and a question left hanging in the margin. As the catalog file notes, similar entries appear in farm ledgers across the Midwest from that period. Farmers observed changes in their fields when they rotated in legumes, but few stopped to wonder why. The evidence was right there, pressed into paper, waiting for someone to connect the dots. A legume seed slips beneath the soil, almost invisible to the eye. Within days, the roots reach out, searching for a partner. Microscopic bacteria, known as rhizobia, drift through the earth. When they meet the right root, a chemical handshake begins. The plant opens its gates, and the bacteria move in, settling inside tiny spheres called nodules that soon pepper the root system. Inside these nodules, a remarkable exchange takes place. The plant delivers sugars drawn from sunlight, feeding the bacteria. In return, the rhizobia perform a feat no crop can manage alone. They pull nitrogen straight from the air trapped in the soil. Using a specialized enzyme called nitrogenase, the bacteria break apart the tough bonds of atmospheric N2, transforming it into ammonia, a form of nitrogen that plants can use. This process is called biological nitrogen fixation, and it is as old as agriculture itself. The numbers are staggering. Depending on the species and growing conditions, a single acre of healthy clover or vetch can add anywhere from 50 to 300 pounds of nitrogen to the soil each year. That is enough to rival, and sometimes surpass, what farmers pay for in synthetic fertilizer without the energy costs or environmental fallout. The only fuel needed is sunlight and a healthy microbial partnership below ground. As the season turns, the plant roots and leaves decay, releasing this captured nitrogen into the soil. Neighboring grasses, grains, and vegetables all benefit, drawing on a nutrient supply that costs nothing after the initial planting. Unlike synthetic fertilizer, which demands factories, fossil fuels, and global shipping, this natural process unfolds quietly, powered by biology and time. In fields where legumes make up at least 30% of the mix, the boost is noticeable. Crops grow taller, leaves darken, and yields climb, all without a single bag of chemical fertilizer. The science is clear. With the right plant and the right microbes, nature can deliver a steady stream of nitrogen, season after season. For farmers, it is a living system that promises resilience, savings, and a harvest that owes as much to the invisible world beneath their feet as to the weather above. In 1949, a bulletin from Oklahoma State University landed on the desks of county agents across the plains. The title was plain, just another extension report, but the numbers inside caught the attention of anyone who managed a pasture or a wheat field. Agronomists had spent 3 years testing crimson clover and hairy vetch in rotation with ryegrass and native grasses. Their findings were precise. Fields planted with these legumes delivered between 100 and 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre, year after year, with no synthetic fertilizer applied. The data tables broke it down by plot, year, and rainfall. Even in dry seasons, the legume plots matched or outperformed fertilized controls. For every dollar not spent on ammonium nitrate, farmers saw an uptick in yields and a drop in input costs. The report did not rely on anecdotes. It listed side-by-side comparisons, bushel counts, soil tests, and livestock weight gains. In one trial, a mixed pasture with 30% veg produced gains on par with a fully fertilized grass field, creating real savings for growers, up to $25 an acre at 1949 prices. Extension agents noted that the clover and vetch not only built soil fertility, but also improved drought resilience and forage quality. For researchers like Dr. Harold Ray and his team, the results were more than a curiosity. They saw a path forward for farmers squeezed by costs and weather. The promise was simple. With the right mix of legumes, the soil itself could supply a season's worth of nitrogen. No factory, no shipping, no price spikes. Optimism ran high in the pages of the bulletin, hinting at a future where fertilizer bills might shrink to zero, and the only limit was the seed in the ground. In 1991, U.S. Patent 5,041,383 was awarded for a method to enhance nitrogen fixation in non-legume crops by engineering new strains of rhizobium bacteria. The inventors, working with W.R. Grace and Company, described how their modified microbes could outcompete native strains, promising a 9.9% yield jump in Louisiana soybean trials. Just 2 years later, U.S. Patent 5,183,759 landed with the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, covering competitive genetic sequences to boost nodulation and nitrogen transfer. These patents did not describe a miracle weed. They focused on controlling the microscopic partners that made natural fertility possible. With every new patent, the legal boundaries grew tighter. Licensing agreements set the terms for who could use the most effective strains and under what conditions. Some patents were held by public universities, others by private firms, but the result was the same: a patchwork of intellectual property claims that made it harder for independent researchers and small companies to operate freely. Seed companies began bundling inoculant rights with their own products, locking farmers into proprietary supply chains. The price of synthetic nitrogen hovered around 10 cents per pound through the 1950s and the 60s, making it cheap to bypass biological options. But on paper, the real value was shifting, from the open fields to the patent office. The paper trail shows how control over the building blocks of natural fertility changed hands, one filing at a time, setting the stage for the battles that followed. A routine audit at Iowa State University's Special Collections uncovers a curious pattern. In folders for agricultural research from the 1940s, entire years are accounted for: extension bulletins, crop trials, and county agent correspondence, all neatly cataloged. But when archivists search for original farmer diaries documenting nitrogen-fixing crops, the record thins out. The catalog lists a ledger for 1948, supposedly containing handwritten notes on clover rotations and yield increases. Yet the box is empty, and the accession log notes only a missing item, no explanation attached. Archival staff retrace their steps, pulling inventory sheets and transfer records. The farm's name appears on a handful of land deeds from the era, but no diary surfaces in the stacks. Cross-referencing with the university's annual reports, the absence becomes more pronounced. Dozens of extension reports reference field trials in the region, but not a single original observation from the farmer who supposedly recorded the shift. The gap is not limited to one file. Across the Midwest, university archives from the late 1940s show a similar pattern: standardized crop reports, yield tables, and official correspondence, but few first-hand accounts of farmers experimenting with legumes for nitrogen. The archivist's notes reflect a quiet frustration. Records exist for nearly every other aspect of mid-century farming, but the personal accounts that might show a turning point in fertilizer use are missing, misfiled, or never deposited at all. The evidence trail falters, leaving a blank space where a breakthrough might have been documented. In the years after synthetic fertilizers took hold, a quiet transformation swept through the fields and the headlines. Agricultural newspapers that once ran regular columns on cover crops began to shift their focus. By the mid-1950s, articles about clover and vetch faded from the front pages, replaced by glossy spreads touting the speed and certainty of chemical solutions. Extension bulletins, once packed with trial data comparing legumes side by side, slimmed down their coverage or dropped the topic altogether. The Farm Press archive from 1952 to 1970 shows a sharp drop in stories about biological nitrogen. Instead, advertisements for ammonium nitrate and urea dominated the margins, promising bigger harvests with every bag. Funding patterns followed the same arc. University research grants that once supported legume trials and soil health studies were redirected toward maximizing yields with commercial inputs. Annual reports from land-grant colleges list fewer projects on mixed pastures and more on fertilizer response curves. By the late 1960s, the number of active cover crop trials in public records had dwindled to a handful. The practical knowledge of managing clover or vetch was no longer passed down or published at scale, just a few scattered footnotes in technical journals. Today, the absence is hard to miss. In the Midwest, fields once dotted with white and crimson blooms now stretch green and bare. Fewer than 5% of U.S. row crop acres use any cover crop at all. Ask a new generation of farmers about biological nitrogen, and most will point to a bag, not a plant. The silence, both in the media and in practice, leaves a question hanging in the air. Was this shift simply progress, or was something else at work? Today, clover and other nitrogen-fixing plants remain widely available, promoted by agricultural experts as vital tools for sustainable farming. The real threat isn't a vanished miracle weed. It is how myths distract from solutions hiding in plain sight. As fertilizer costs soar and soil health declines, the answers we seek may already grow beneath our feet. What do you think? Are we overlooking the obvious? Share your thoughts below.